The coffee was burning. Chen could smell it from 3 tables away, the bitter scent cutting through the familiar symphony of clinking plates and muffled conversations that filled Rosie's diner at 2:47 a.m. She glanced at the ancient coffee maker, its red light blinking like a warning beacon, but her hands remained steady as she continued sketching mathematical symbols across the paper napkins spread before her on table 7. The numbers flowed from her ballpoint pen like water finding its course down a mountainside. Elegant, inevitable, perfectly balanced. Each equation built upon the last, creating a cascading architecture of logic that solved what Silicon Valley's brightest minds had been wrestling with for months: how to optimize data compression in real time without sacrificing quality. The algorithm taking shape on the thin paper napkin represented a breakthrough worth millions, maybe billions. Maya knew this with the same certainty she knew the coffee was about to scorch if someone didn't tend to it soon. But she also knew that in 43 minutes, her shift would end and she'd walk home to her studio apartment above the laundromat, where her MIT acceptance letter, 2 years old now, still sat unopened in her desk drawer. If you're enjoying Maya's incredible journey from waitress to tech genius, this story takes just 15 minutes of your time, but could change how you think about hidden talent forever. Hit that like button and subscribe for more inspiring stories of people who dared to dream bigger than their circumstances. The letter that promised everything she'd ever dreamed of, but remained unopened due to her mother's medical expenses. "Maya, honey, table 12 needs their check," called Rosie Martinez from behind the counter, her voice carrying the warm authority of someone who'd been running this diner since before Maya was born. Rosie's weathered hands moved with practice efficiency as she plated the late-night special: eggs over easy, wheat toast, hash browns scattered and smothered. She'd been watching Maya scribble on napkins during slow periods for months now, never commenting, but always ensuring Maya had fresh napkins and uninterrupted time when the dinner rush died down. Maya looked up from her calculations, blinking as her mind shifted from the abstract beauty of algorithmic optimization to the concrete reality of customer service. Table 12 sat a man she'd never seen before. Probably in his 50s, expensive suit wrinkled from travel, briefcase positioned protectively beside his chair. He'd been nursing the same cup of coffee for 2 hours, occasionally glancing at his laptop screen with the frustrated expression of someone fighting a losing battle against stubborn code. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about data compression algorithms, would you?" he asked with a rueful laugh, gesturing at his screen. "I know it's a long shot, but I've been stuck on this problem for weeks, and I'm starting to think I need a fresh perspective from someone who doesn't live and breathe code 24/7. Maya felt her heart skip. The question hung in the air between them like a bridge she could cross or ignore. She glanced back at Rosie, who was pretending not to listen while wiping down the counter with unusual focus. The late-night crowd had thinned to just 3 tables: the businessman at 12, an elderly trucker at the counter working through his second piece of apple pie, and 2 college students sharing a plate of cheese fries while cramming for what looked like a physics exam. "I might know a thing or two," Maya said carefully, her hand unconsciously moving to the napkin in her pocket, almost without thinking. "What kind of compression are you working with?" The man's eyes lit up with the fervor of someone who'd found an unexpected lifeline. "Real-time video compression for streaming platforms. We're trying to maintain quality while reducing bandwidth usage by at least 30%. The current industry-standard algorithms can't handle the processing speed we need without introducing artifacts or delay." Maya's pulse quickened. She'd been working on this exact problem, approaching it from a different angle than the traditional methods. Instead of focusing on reducing file size after the fact, her algorithm addressed compression during the initial data capture phase, using predictive modeling to eliminate redundancies before they were even recorded. "The issue isn't with the compression ratio," Maya found herself saying, pulling the napkin from her pocket almost without thinking. "Most algorithms work retroactively, trying to squeeze down data that's already been captured inefficiently. She unfolded the napkin on the table beside his laptop, revealing the maze of equations and flowcharts she'd been developing. The man's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips as he stared at the mathematical poetry spread across the thin paper. "You're approaching it predictively," he whispered, his voice filled with the reverence of someone recognizing genius. "Using machine learning to anticipate redundancies before they're captured, then adjusting the input parameters in real time to optimize for compression." "Exactly," Maya said, warming to the subject despite herself. "Traditional algorithms are like trying to pack a suitcase after you've already thrown everything in randomly. This approach is like folding each item as you pack it, knowing exactly how everything will fit together before you even start." The man set down his coffee cup with trembling hands and extended one toward Maya. "I'm David Reeves," he said. "I'm the CEO of Streamflow Technologies. We've been working on this problem with a team of 12 engineers for 8 months, and you just solved it on a napkin during your coffee break." Maya stared at the offered handshake, her mind reeling. Streamflow Technologies. She knew the name. They were one of the fastest-growing streaming platforms, valued at over $2 billion and constantly in the tech news for their innovative approach to content delivery. And their CEO was sitting in her diner at 3 in the morning, shaking her hand over a napkin covered in equations. "Maya Chen," she managed, accepting the handshake. "And this isn't my coffee break. I work here." David Reeves looked around the diner as if seeing it for the first time, really seeing it. The worn vinyl booths, the checkered linoleum floor, the vintage Coca-Cola clock that had been running 10 minutes slow for as long as Maya could remember. His gaze returned to Maya, taking in her diner uniform, her name tag, the pen stains on her fingers from hours of equation writing. "You work here," he repeated slowly. "You understand advanced algorithmic theory better than most people with computer science PhDs. "I read a lot," Maya said, suddenly self-conscious. The adrenaline of discussing her algorithm was fading, replaced by the familiar weight of her circumstances. "Look, Mr. Reeves, I should get back to work. Rosie needs me to— How much do you make here? Annually, I mean." Maya felt her cheeks flush. "I don't think that's really— 40,000? 50? David continued, pulling out his phone. "Because I'd like to offer you a position at Streamflow. Senior algorithm developer, starting salary of $250,000, plus equity, plus signing bonus." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. $250,000, more than 6 times what she made at the diner, more money she'd ever imagined having. Enough to pay for her mother's treatments, to finally accept that MIT offer, to stop choosing between dreams and survival. "I can't," she heard herself saying, the words coming from some automatic part of her brain while the rest of her mind screamed in protest. I don't have a degree. I never went to college. I can't just—" "You just revolutionized our entire development approach with a ballpoint pen and a napkin," David said firmly. "I don't care if you went to MIT or if you're self-taught from YouTube videos. Talent like yours doesn't require a certificate to validate it." Behind the counter, Rosie had stopped pretending not to listen. The trucker had swiveled on his stool to watch the conversation unfold. Even the college students had looked up from their textbooks, drawn by the electric tension that had settled over table 12. Maya's hand found the other napkins in her pocket. Weeks of work, months of late-night problem-solving, years of dreams deferred but never abandoned. Each napkin represented a piece of a larger puzzle she'd been assembling in stolen moments between serving coffee and taking orders. A bridge between the life she was living and the life she'd always imagined. "I need to think about this," Maya said resignedly, her voice barely audible. This is a lot." David nodded, reaching into his briefcase and pulling out a business card. "Of course. But Maya, I want you to understand something. What you've created here," he gestured to the napkin still spread on the table, "this isn't just clever. This is transformative. This algorithm could change how the entire streaming industry operates." He placed the card on top of the napkin, the crisp white paper a stark contrast to the coffee-stained equations beneath it. "Call me when you've decided, but don't wait too long. Innovation like this can't sit idle forever." As David Reeves gathered his belongings and left a $20 tip on an $8 check, Maya remained frozen at table 12, staring at the business card resting atop her napkin algorithm. The card was thick, expensive paper with embossed lettering. David Reeves, CEO, Streamflow Technologies. Below his name was a phone number that could change everything. The coffee maker finally gave up its battle, releasing a sharp hiss of steam that snapped Maya back to the present moment. She looked around the diner, at Rosie, watching her with knowing eyes, at the familiar surroundings that had been her world for the past 2 years, at the life she'd built from necessity rather than choice. In her pocket, the acceptance letter from MIT seemed to whisper possibilities she'd thought were lost forever. On the table before her, the napkin algorithm represented a bridge between worlds, between serving coffee and writing code, between survival and success, between the life she was living and the life she'd always dreamed of living. But bridges, Maya knew, required courage to cross, and she wasn't sure she had enough courage for a leap this large, this sudden, this terrifyingly perfect. The clock on the wall ticked toward 4 a.m., marking the end of another shift, the beginning of another day, and the moment when everything changed, even though Maya didn't yet know if she was brave enough to let it. Maya's apartment above Chen's laundromat smelled perpetually of fabric softener and industrial detergent, a combination that had become so familiar she only noticed it when she brought someone new inside, which happened roughly never. The studio space was barely 400 square feet, but she'd made it feel larger through careful arrangement and the kind of resourceful decorating that came from having more creativity than money. Her desk dominated one corner, a thrift store find she'd reinforced with metal brackets and painted a cheerful yellow that matched the sunflowers she kept in a mason jar by the window. The desk's surface told the story of her double life. On one side sat her diner uniforms, freshly washed and pressed, alongside scheduling sheets and tip money sorted into mason jars labeled rent, groceries, mom's medicine, and MIT fund, though the last jar had remained empty for months. On the other side of the desk lived her real passion, 3 computer monitors arranged in a semicircle, connected to a desktop computer she'd built herself from components purchased one piece at a time over the course of 2 years. The setup was impressive for its age and price point, capable of running complex programming environments and mathematical modeling software she'd acquired through student licenses she technically no longer qualified for. Maya kicked off her non-slip restaurant shoes and padded to the kitchenette, where she started her morning routine with the mechanical precision of someone who'd perfected efficiency through necessity. Coffee first, not the burnt sludge from the diner, but a single cup of good beans she allowed herself each morning, ground by hand and brewed in a small French press her mother had given her for Christmas 3 years ago. While the coffee steeped, she pulled David Reeves' business card from her apron pocket and propped it against the sugar container where it seemed to glow under the morning light streaming through her single window. Streamflow Technologies, Senior Algorithm Developer. $250,000. The numbers felt abstract, impossible. She'd done the math countless times, sitting at the same desk in the small hours of the morning when sleep eluded her and her mind turned to calculations. At her current savings rate, she could afford 1 semester at MIT in approximately 4 years, assuming tuition didn't increase and her mother's medical expenses remained stable. Both assumptions were laughably optimistic. Maya poured her coffee and settled into her desk chair, a second-hand office chair she'd reupholstered with fabric from her mother's sewing basket. The acceptance letter from MIT lay in the top drawer exactly where she'd placed it 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days ago. She didn't need to open the drawer to remember every word of the letter, from the opening congratulations to the final deadline for enrollment deposit, a deadline that had passed so long ago it felt like ancient history. She'd been 22 when the letter arrived, fresh from graduating summa cum laude from the local community college with an associate's degree in mathematics. Her professors had encouraged her to apply to 4-year universities, writing glowing recommendation letters and waiving application fees when they learned about her financial situation. MIT had been her reach school, the impossible dream she'd applied to more out of curiosity than genuine expectation. The timing felt cruelly ironic, acceptance and diagnosis arriving the same day. Now, with David Reeves' business card reflecting the morning light, Maya felt that same cosmic humor at work. The opportunity was too perfect, too precisely timed to be coincidence. She'd been designing algorithms in secret for 2 years, sharing her work anonymously on programming forums, solving problems for the intellectual challenge rather than any hope of professional advancement.
The compression algorithm on the napkin represented months of work, refined during breaks between serving tables and washing dishes. Maya opened her laptop and navigated to her private GitHub repository, where she'd kept her completed projects. Before we see what happens when Maya finally takes this leap of faith, take a moment to like this story and share it with someone who needs to hear that talent can emerge from anywhere. Your support helps us bring you more stories of ordinary people achieving extraordinary things. The folders read like a catalog of unused potential: database optimization protocols, machine learning image recognition, predictive analytics for market trading, blockchain security applications. Each folder contained work that would have been impressive coming from a graduate student at a top-tier university. Instead, they existed in digital isolation, admired by no one except the occasional anonymous forum user who stumbled across her solutions to complex programming challenges. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her mother. "Morning, sweetheart. Feeling good today. Dr. Martinez says the new treatment is working well. Love you." Maya smiled, feeling the familiar knot of worry in her chest loosen slightly. Her mother, Chen, had been battling ovarian cancer for 2 years with the kind of graceful determination that made Maya simultaneously proud and heartbroken. Linda worked as a seamstress when her energy allowed, taking in alterations and mending jobs from their small apartment across town. She'd never once suggested that Maya should abandon her college dreams, but she didn't need to. Maya could read the exhaustion in her mother's eyes during the worst days of chemotherapy, could calculate the mounting medical bills that insurance only partially covered. Maya typed back, "That's wonderful news, Mom. Can't wait to see you this afternoon. Making your favorite soup for lunch." She'd started spending her days off at her mother's apartment, cooking meals that could be frozen for the week ahead and helping with household tasks that had become difficult during treatment. It was during these visits that Maya felt the full weight of her decision to stay local, to choose family over dreams. She never regretted the choice, but she sometimes wondered who she might have become if circumstances had been different. The business card seemed to pulse with possibility on her desk. $250,000 would change everything, not just for Maya, but for her mother. They could afford better treatment options, specialists in experimental therapies that insurance considered too novel to cover. Maya could hire help for her mother and could ensure she never had to worry about choosing between medication and rent. But accepting David's offer would also mean leaving behind everything familiar. Streamflow was based in San Francisco, a world away from her small Virginia town. Maya opened her web browser and began researching Streamflow technologies with the thoroughness that had made her a formidable problem solver. The company had been founded 5 years earlier by David Reeves and 2 partners, growing from a startup with 3 employees to a major streaming platform with over 200 staff members. Their stock had increased in value by 400% over the past year, driven largely by innovations in content delivery and user experience optimization. The employee profiles showcased impressive credentials: Ivy League degrees, advanced PhDs, Google alumni. Maya stared at her reflection in her laptop screen, seeing a 24-year-old woman in a faded t-shirt and pajama pants, her hair still smelling faintly of bacon grease from the morning shift. She looked nothing like the polished professionals on Streamflow's website, felt nothing like someone who belonged in their world of venture capital funding and algorithmic innovation. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Rosie. Maya answered on the second ring. "Honey, I hope you don't mind me calling so early, but I couldn't stop thinking about what happened last night. That man, the job offer, Maya, sweetheart, this could be your chance." "I don't know, Rosie," Maya said, settling back in her chair. "It feels too good to be true, like there has to be a catch." "The only catch I see is you talking yourself out of it," Rosie replied with characteristic directness. "I've been watching you scribble equations on napkins for months, seeing how your eyes light up when you're working on those problems. This isn't about luck, mija. This is about someone finally recognizing what I've known all along. You're too talented for this town." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Rosie had never finished high school, had been working since she was 14 to help support her family, but she had an instinct for people, a way of seeing potential that formal education couldn't teach. What about Mom? What about the diner? I can't just abandon. Your mama wants you to succeed more than she wants anything else in this world, Rosie interrupted. And as for the diner, honey, I hired plenty of waitresses before you came along. I'll manage just fine. After ending the call, Maya sat in the growing morning light, staring at the business card and thinking about paths not taken. She'd always been practical, choosing stability over risk, responsibility over opportunity. It was a survival strategy that had served her well, but it was also a cage of her own construction. She pulled up the Streamflow Technologies careers page and found the job posting for senior algorithm developer. The requirements section made her heart sink. Master's degree in computer science or related field required, minimum 5 years experience in algorithm development, published research preferred. The gap between her abilities and her credentials felt insurmountable. Even if David Reeves was willing to overlook her lack of formal education, his board of directors and existing staff might not be so accepting. Maya imagined herself in meetings with PhD engineers trying to explain her solutions without the vocabulary of academic computer science, defending her approaches without citations from respected journals. But then she looked at the napkin algorithm, still lying on her desk where she'd placed it after coming home from the diner. The mathematics was undeniably elegant, the approach genuinely innovative. David Reeves hadn't asked about her education when he recognized the breakthrough she had created. He'd seen the solution, not the credentials of the person who developed it. Maya made herself a second cup of coffee and opened her programming environment. If she was going to make this decision, she needed to be completely honest about her capabilities. For the next 3 hours, she worked on implementing her compression algorithm in code, translating the mathematical concepts from the napkin into functional software. The process was meditative, almost hypnotic. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency, crafting elegant functions and optimized data structures. She tested edge cases, refined performance metrics, and created documentation that would allow another programmer to understand and modify her work. By noon, she had a working prototype that demonstrated a 37% improvement in compression efficiency over existing industry standards. Maya stared at the test results on her screen, feeling a surge of pride and possibility. This wasn't just theoretical mathematics on a napkin anymore. This was functional software that could revolutionize an industry. Created in her tiny apartment with her secondhand equipment and self-taught skills. She picked up David Reeves' business card and dialed the number before she could lose her nerve. The phone rang twice before David Reeves answered, his voice crisp and professional despite the early afternoon timing. David speaking. Mr. Reeves, this is Maya Chen from the diner last night. Maya's voice wavered slightly, betraying the nervousness she was trying to suppress. Maya! David's tone immediately warmed with enthusiasm. I was hoping you'd call. Have you given my offer some thought? Maya looked at her computer screen, where her implementation of the compression algorithm displayed test results that exceeded her own expectations. I have, and I'm interested, but I need to be completely honest with you about my background. Go ahead. And David could hear the soft click of a door closing, suggesting he'd moved to a private office for the conversation. I don't have a college degree, Maya began, her words coming in a rush. I graduated from community college with an associate's degree in mathematics, but I never transferred to a 4-year university. Everything I know about computer science and algorithm development is self-taught. I don't have any professional experience in tech, just the work I do on my own time. She paused, waiting for David's response, expecting him to politely withdraw his offer or suggest she gain more experience before reapplying. Instead, she heard him chuckle. Maya, do you know who created Facebook? A college dropout. Google's search algorithm, developed by 2 PhD students who never finished their dissertations. Apple's early operating systems, built by a team that included high school graduates and community college attendees. The tech industry loves to fetishize credentials, but the most revolutionary innovations usually come from people who think differently precisely because they learn differently. Maya felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. But your other employees, I looked at your website. Everyone has advanced degrees from top universities. My current employees do, yes, and they're talented people doing good work. But they're also approaching problems from very similar angles with very similar educational backgrounds. Sometimes you need someone who learned programming from YouTube tutorials and developed algorithms on napkins during coffee breaks. Sometimes the outsider perspective is exactly what you need to solve problems the insiders can't crack. Maya walked to her window, looking down at the street below where her neighbors were going about their afternoon routines. Mrs. Patterson was hanging laundry on her fire escape. The teenager from 3B was practicing skateboard tricks on the sidewalk. Her world felt small and contained, safe in its predictability. The position would require relocating to San Francisco, Maya said, more to herself than to David. Yes, though we'd cover all relocation expenses and help you find housing. The Bay Area is expensive, but your salary would more than compensate for the cost of living increase. David paused. Is relocation a concern? Maya thought about her mother, currently napping in her apartment across town after a morning of chemotherapy. She thought about Rosie, who'd given her a job when she needed one most and trusted her with increasing responsibility. She thought about the familiar rhythms of small-town life, where everyone knew her name and her story. I've never lived anywhere else, Maya admitted. And my mother is here. She's been receiving cancer treatment, and I'm her primary caregiver. I see. David's voice softened with understanding. Family obligations are important. Would it help if I mentioned that StreamFlow offers excellent health insurance, including coverage for family members? We also have partnerships with some of the best cancer treatment centers in the country, including UCSF and Stanford Medical. Maya's breath caught. The treatments her mother was receiving locally were effective, but limited by what their small hospital could offer and what insurance would cover. Access to cutting-edge cancer research and treatment could make the difference between remission and cure. Could my mother relocate with me? Maya asked. Of course. We can help arrange housing that would accommodate both of you, and our HR team can assist with finding the best medical care for her specific needs. David paused, seeming to sense Maya's internal struggle. Would it help if you visited first? I could fly you out for a long weekend, show you the office, introduce you to the team, let you get a feel for whether this might work for you. The offer was generous, almost too generous. Maya felt the familiar wariness that came from receiving something that seemed too good to be true. Why are you being so accommodating? You barely know me. David was quiet for a moment before responding. Can I tell you something about the early days of StreamFlow? We were struggling with a critical server architecture problem that was limiting our growth. I hired consultants, brought in experts, even tried to poach talent from our competitors. Nothing worked. Then one night, I was in the office at 2 a.m., frustrated and exhausted, and I decided to post the problem on an obscure programming forum just to see if anyone had fresh ideas. Maya listened, sensing this story had personal significance for David. 3 hours later, someone with the username Quantum Coffee posted a solution that was so elegant, so perfectly calibrated to our specific needs, that I immediately knew it was the breakthrough we needed. The solution saved our company, allowed us to scale to millions of users. I tried to contact Quantum Coffee to offer them a job, but they disappeared from the forum. Maya's heart began racing. Quantum Coffee was her username, had been for over a year. She remembered the StreamFlow architecture problem David was describing, a complex challenge involving load balancing and database optimization that she'd worked on during a particularly slow night at the diner. Maya, David continued, when I saw your napkin algorithm last night, I recognized not just the mathematical elegance, but the specific approach to problem solving. The way you build solutions from first principles, the efficiency of your logic structures. You're quantum coffee, aren't you? Maya sank into her desk chair, feeling exposed and exhilarated simultaneously. How did you know? Because I've been looking for quantum coffee for 8 months, David said with obvious satisfaction. That forum solution didn't just help StreamFlow, it revolutionized our entire technical infrastructure. We've built our competitive advantage around the principles you outlined in that post. I've wanted to offer quantum coffee a position ever since, but I never imagined I'd find them serving coffee in a diner in Virginia. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with David outlining specifics of the position, discussing timeline and expectations, and answering Maya's increasingly detailed questions about the company's technical challenges. By the time they ended the call, Maya had agreed to visit StreamFlow's offices the following weekend for what David called a mutual interview, a chance for both sides to determine if the opportunity was as perfect as it appeared. After hanging up, Maya sat in her apartment, staring at her computer screen and trying to process what had just happened. Her secret identity as Quantum Coffee, the anonymous problem solver who'd helped companies around the world optimize their systems, had been discovered by the CEO of a company she'd unknowingly helped save. The coincidence felt surreal, like something from a movie rather than her ordinary life. Maya spent the rest of the afternoon researching San Francisco, reading about neighborhoods and apartment prices, looking at photos of the city where she might soon be living. The cost of living was staggering. Studio apartments rented for more than she currently made in 2 months. But with the salary David had offered, even San Francisco's inflated prices seemed manageable. She also researched cancer treatment options on the West Coast, finding several renowned medical centers that offered experimental therapies not available at her mother's current hospital. The possibility of giving her mother access to the most advanced treatments available felt like a gift beyond measure. When her shift at the diner began that evening, Maya felt like she was moving through a dream. The familiar routines, taking orders, refilling coffee, and cleaning tables seemed to belong to someone else's life. She caught herself studying the other customers, wondering if any of them were secretly brilliant at something, hiding talents behind ordinary facades. "You're distracted tonight," Rosie observed during a quiet moment around 9 p.m. "Good distracted or bad distracted?" Maya smiled, pulling David's business card from her pocket. "I'm flying to San Francisco this weekend for an interview." Rosie's face broke into a huge grin. "Mija, that's wonderful. I knew that man was serious about his offer." She paused, studying Maya's expression. "You're scared." It wasn't a question. Rosie had an uncanny ability to read Maya's moods, developed over countless late-night conversations during slow shifts. "Terrified," Maya admitted. "What if I'm not as good as I think I am? What if I get there and realize I'm completely out of my depth?" "Then you'll learn," Rosie said simply. "But Maya, honey, I've seen you solve problems that grown men with fancy degrees couldn't figure out. I've watched you turn this diner scheduling nightmare into a smooth operation, seen you help customers troubleshoot their phones and computers like you were born knowing how to do it. You're not going to San Francisco as someone pretending to be smart. You're going as someone who is smart, finally getting the chance to prove it to the right people." The weekend trip to San Francisco was a whirlwind of new experiences and overwhelming impressions. Maya had never been on an airplane before, never stayed in a hotel nicer than the roadside motels her family had occasionally visited during childhood vacations. StreamFlow had booked her a room at a boutique hotel in the Mission District, where the view from her window showed a city unlike anything she'd ever imagined. San Francisco's hills and fog, its mixture of Victorian architecture and modern glass towers, its streets filled with people from dozens of different countries speaking languages Maya couldn't identify, everything felt electric with possibility and slightly dangerous with change. Walking from her hotel to StreamFlow's offices in Soma, Maya felt simultaneously invisible and exposed, just another person among thousands, yet somehow certain that everyone could see she didn't belong. Streamflow's headquarters occupied 3 floors of a converted warehouse. Its exposed brick walls and industrial lighting created an atmosphere that was both sophisticated and relaxed. Maya arrived early for her 10 a.m. appointment, spending 15 minutes in the lobby admiring the awards and press coverage displayed on the walls, reading about the company's growth and innovation awards. David Reeves greeted her personally, appearing in the lobby with the same warm smile he'd worn at the diner. But here, in his natural environment, he seemed larger, more confident, surrounded by the trappings of success that reminded Maya of the gulf between their worlds. "Maya, welcome to Streamflow," David said, shaking her hand with genuine enthusiasm. "I hope you're ready for a busy day. I've arranged for you to meet with several team members, tour our facilities, and get a real sense of what working here would be like." The next 6 hours were intense and exhilarating. Maya met with senior engineers who quizzed her about her approach to algorithm development, walked through coding challenges that tested her problem-solving abilities, and participated in brainstorming sessions about Streamflow's future technical needs. Each interaction left her feeling more confident that she could contribute meaningfully to their work, while simultaneously highlighting how much she still had to learn. Dr. Jennifer Liu, Streamflow's Chief Technology Officer, was particularly intimidating. A woman in her early 40s with a PhD from Stanford and a resume that included leadership roles at Apple and Netflix. But when Maya explained her compression algorithm using a whiteboard in the conference room, Dr. Liu's expression shifted from polite skepticism to genuine excitement. "This is exceptional work," Dr. Liu said, photographing Maya's whiteboard calculations with her phone. "The mathematical foundation is solid, but more importantly, the practical applications are immediately obvious. How long did it take you to develop this approach?" "About 3 months of evening work," Maya replied, feeling simultaneously proud and embarrassed by the modest time frame. "3 months?" Dr. Liu repeated, shaking her head in apparent disbelief. "Our team has been working on similar optimization problems for over a year, with significantly more resources and formal research backing. The fact that you achieved this breakthrough working alone in your spare time suggests a level of intuitive understanding that can't be taught." Maya felt a flush of pride, but also a nagging sense of imposter syndrome. "I had the advantage of approaching it without preconceptions about how it should be done," she said. "Sometimes not knowing the conventional wisdom can be helpful." "Exactly," Dr. Liu agreed. "Academic training can sometimes create blind spots. We get so focused on established methodologies that we miss elegant alternatives." She paused, studying Maya with sharp intelligence. "David mentioned you're self-taught. Can you walk me through your learning process?" Maya spent the next 20 minutes describing her unconventional education. Late nights watching MIT OpenCourseWare lectures, working through textbooks borrowed from the library, participating in online programming challenges, and most importantly, seeking out real-world problems to solve rather than academic exercises. "The forum work was crucial," Maya explained. "When you're helping actual companies solve actual problems, you learn to focus on solutions that work in practice, not just in theory. You develop an instinct for what's elegant versus what's merely clever." The day continued with meetings and technical discussions that pushed Maya to articulate ideas she'd never had to explain aloud. Marcus Thompson, the lead back-end engineer, challenged her compression algorithm from multiple angles, probing for weaknesses and testing her understanding of edge cases. Maya found herself energized by the intellectual combat, defending her approach while simultaneously identifying areas for improvement. "Your algorithm handles standard video compression beautifully," Marcus said, leaning back in his chair after an hour of technical discussion. "But what about live streaming scenarios where you can't predict content patterns in advance?" Maya considered the question, her mind immediately jumping to modifications that could address real-time applications. "You'd need to implement adaptive learning," she said, moving to the whiteboard again. Instead of relying on historical patterns, the algorithm could analyze incoming data streams in real time, adjusting compression parameters based on content characteristics. She began sketching a modified version of her algorithm, one that incorporated machine learning elements she'd been exploring in her spare time. Marcus watched with growing interest as Maya outlined a system that could optimize itself continuously, learning from each stream to improve future performance. "This is getting into artificial intelligence territory," Marcus observed. "Have you worked with neural networks before?" "Some," I admitted. "I've been experimenting with TensorFlow and PyTorch, mostly for personal projects. I built a system for predicting optimal work schedules at the diner based on customer traffic patterns." The room fell silent for a moment as the implications of this casual statement sank in. Maya had applied advanced machine learning techniques to restaurant scheduling, not because anyone asked her to, but simply because she saw a problem worth solving. Chen, the product manager, who'd been quietly observing the technical discussions, leaned forward with obvious interest. "You used AI to optimize diner scheduling. How much improvement did you achieve?" Maya felt embarrassed by the attention, but answered honestly. "Labor costs decreased by about 15%, and customer wait times dropped by an average of 3 minutes during peak hours. The system learned to predict busy periods based on weather patterns, local events, and historical data." 15% labor cost reduction, Sarah repeated, making notes on her tablet. "Maya, do you realize that restaurants typically operate on profit margins of 3 to 5%? A 15% reduction in labor costs could literally save a struggling business." The comment sparked a broader discussion about practical applications of advanced algorithms, with several team members sharing stories about theoretical breakthroughs that failed to translate into real-world improvements. Maya's approach of identifying concrete problems and developing targeted solutions impressed everyone she met. By late afternoon, Maya felt cautiously optimistic about her performance. The technical challenges had been demanding but manageable, and she'd held her own in discussions with some of the most accomplished engineers she'd ever met. More importantly, she'd begun to see how her unconventional background might actually be an advantage rather than a liability.
"We're facing a critical decision point," David explained, pulling up a presentation on the conference room's large monitor. "The streaming industry is becoming increasingly competitive, with new platforms launching monthly. Our current technical advantage is solid, but it's not sustainable long-term. We need breakthrough innovations, not incremental improvements." The presentation outlined StreamFlow's current challenges: increasing bandwidth costs, user demands for higher quality video, pressure from competitors with larger development budgets, and the need to expand into new markets with different technical requirements. Maya listened, recognizing problems she'd been thinking about during her anonymous work on programming forums. "Maya," Dr. Liu said, "based on what you've seen today, where do you think we should focus our development efforts?" The question felt like a test, but Maya sensed it was also a genuine request for perspective. She considered everything she had learned about StreamFlow's infrastructure, their competitive position, and the broader industry trends she'd been following. "You're thinking too narrowly about compression," Maya said finally. "Everyone in the industry is fighting the same battle, trying to squeeze more efficiency out of existing approaches. But what if you approach the entire streaming pipeline differently?" Maya moved to the whiteboard, her mind racing as she outlined a comprehensive vision that built on her compression algorithm but extended far beyond it. She described a system that would dynamically optimize every aspect of content delivery based on real-time analysis of user behavior, network conditions, and content characteristics. Instead of treating compression as an isolated problem, you integrate it with content caching, bandwidth management, and user experience optimization, Maya explained, her voice gaining confidence as the ideas flowed. The system learns not just how to compress video more efficiently, but when to preload content, which quality levels to offer different users, and how to route data through the most efficient network paths. The room was silent as Maya finished her explanation, the whiteboard covered with interconnected diagrams and mathematical formulas. She'd essentially outlined a complete reimagining of how streaming platforms could operate, using artificial intelligence to optimize every component of the user experience. Michael Park was the first to speak. "This is incredibly ambitious," he said slowly.
You're describing a system that would require significant AI infrastructure, massive data processing capabilities, and integration across every aspect of our platform. Yes, Maya agreed, suddenly worried that she'd overreached. It would be a major undertaking. It would also revolutionize the industry, Dr. Liu added, studying the whiteboard with obvious fascination. Maya, what you've outlined here goes far beyond algorithm optimization. This is a fundamental reimagining of how streaming technology could work. David stood and walked to the whiteboard, tracing some of Maya's diagrams with his finger. The scope is massive, but the potential return is proportional. If we could implement even half of what you've described, we'd have a competitive advantage that would be almost impossible for competitors to replicate. Maya felt a surge of excitement mixed with terror. She'd started the day hoping to prove she could handle a senior algorithm developer position. Instead, she'd apparently outlined a technical vision that could transform StreamFlow's entire business model. How long would something like this take to develop? Michael asked. Maya considered the question carefully. A full implementation would require at least 2 years, probably longer. But you could build it in stages, implementing individual components that provide immediate benefits while working toward the complete system. And you'd want to lead this development? David asked. The question hung in the air like a challenge and an opportunity simultaneously. Maya looked around the conference room at the accomplished executives who were waiting for her answer, felt the weight of the decision that could change everything. Yes, she said simply. I'd want to lead it. As the meeting concluded, Maya felt exhilarated and overwhelmed. She'd not only demonstrated her technical capabilities, but had apparently impressed StreamFlow's leadership enough that they were considering restructuring their entire development strategy around her ideas. David walked her back to the lobby as the workday ended, the office emptying as employees headed home to their lives in one of the most expensive cities in the world. Maya, I want to be completely transparent with you, David said, as they waited for her rideshare. What happened in that conference room was extraordinary. You didn't just interview for a position, you essentially pitched a vision that could define our company's future. The leadership team is incredibly excited about the possibilities. Maya felt a flutter of anxiety. It feels like a lot of responsibility.
It is, David agreed. But it's also an incredible opportunity. If you accept our offer, you wouldn't just be joining StreamFlow as an employee, you'd be joining as a key architect of our technical future. We'd be investing in your vision as much as your skills. The rideshare arrived, and Maya gathered her thoughts as she prepared to return to her hotel. What happens next? I'll have a formal offer to you by Monday morning, David said. Take your time considering it. This is a big decision, and I want you to be completely certain it's right for you. As Maya's car pulled away from StreamFlow's offices, she watched the city lights begin to twinkle in the gathering dusk. San Francisco felt less foreign now, more like a place where she could imagine building a life. But the magnitude of what had been offered still felt overwhelming. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How did it go, sweetheart?" Maya stared at the message, unsure how to summarize a day that had exceeded her wildest expectations. Finally, she typed back, "Better than I ever imagined. I'll call you tonight with details." The flight back to Virginia the next morning gave Maya time to process everything that had happened. She'd left for San Francisco, hoping to prove she could handle a technical position at a major company. Instead, she'd apparently convinced them to restructure their entire development strategy around her ideas. The responsibility was daunting, but it was also exactly what she'd been unknowingly preparing for during years of solving problems in isolation. Every late-night coding session, every forum post helping struggling programmers, every napkin covered with equations had been building toward this moment. As her plane descended through the clouds toward home, Maya realized she wasn't just considering a job offer anymore. She was considering a complete transformation of her life, from serving coffee in a small Virginia town to leading technical innovation at a Silicon Valley company valued in the billions. The decision felt monumental, but also inevitable. She'd spent years hiding her talents behind the safety of anonymity and low expectations.
Streamflow was offering her the chance to step fully into her capabilities, to discover how far her abilities could take her when supported by resources and challenged by the brightest minds in the industry. Maya's phone contained David's promise of a formal offer by Monday, but she already knew what her answer would be. Maya spent Sunday evening at her mother's apartment, sharing stories from her San Francisco trip while they worked together preparing meals for the week ahead. Linda Chen listened with the focused attention she'd always given to Maya's dreams, asking thoughtful questions about the technical challenges and expressing wonder at the opportunities being offered. "They want to build an entire system around your ideas?" Linda asked, carefully portioning homemade soup into freezer containers. Her movements were slower than they had been before the cancer treatments, but her eyes sparkled with the same intelligence that had helped Maya develop her love of problem-solving. "It sounds almost too good to be true," Maya admitted, testing the seasoning in another pot. Linda set down her ladle and turned to face her daughter fully. "Maya, sweetheart, I want to tell you something. When you were 12 years old, you redesigned the filing system at Dr. Martinez's office because you thought their patient scheduling was inefficient. You weren't asked to do it. You just saw a problem and fixed it during a routine checkup." Maya smiled at the memory. She'd been waiting in the doctor's office, watching the receptionist struggle with a clearly disorganized system, and had quietly suggested a better approach during her appointment. Dr. Martinez still uses that system. 7 years later, he still brags about the brilliant girl who revolutionized his practice in 15 minutes. That's who you are, Maya. You see solutions where other people see problems. The people at Streamflow didn't make a mistake. They recognized something that's been obvious to everyone who knows you. Monday morning arrived with David's promised formal offer, delivered via email at exactly 9 a.m. Pacific time. Maya read through the contract details twice, her disbelief growing with each section. The salary was exactly what David had quoted, $250,000 annually, plus equity that could be worth millions if Streamflow continued its growth trajectory. The signing bonus alone was more than Maya had ever had in her bank account at one time. But more significant than the financial terms was the position description. Maya wouldn't simply be joining as a senior algorithm developer. The offer outlined a newly created role, Director of Innovative Systems Development, with responsibility for leading a dedicated team focused on implementing her vision for integrated streaming optimization. The contract included relocation assistance that covered moving expenses for both Maya and her mother, housing stipends, and comprehensive health insurance that would provide Linda access to cancer specialists at UCSF Medical Center. Streamflow was essentially offering to relocate and support the Maya family while giving her the resources to pursue the most ambitious project of her career.
Maya printed the contract and drove to the diner for what might be one of her final shifts. She'd asked for time to consider the offer, but deep down, she knew her decision was already made. The opportunity was too perfect, too aligned with everything she'd been working toward in secret. Rosie took one look at Maya's expression and immediately poured 2 cups of coffee, gesturing toward the corner booth where they'd had many important conversations over the past 2 years. "You're going to take it," Rosie said, settling into the worn vinyl seat. It wasn't a question. "I think so," Maya replied, sliding the contract across the table. "But Rosie, this feels huge. What if I'm not ready? What if I fail?" Rosie skimmed the contract terms, her eyebrows rising as she processed the salary and benefits. "Mija, let me tell you something about failure. Failure is staying in a place where you're not using your gifts because you're afraid of discovering your limits. Success is scary because it requires you to find out how good you can actually be." They talked for an hour about practical considerations, timing, transition plans, and the impact on the diner's operations. Rosie was characteristically practical, already planning to promote Marcus, one of the newer servers, and thinking about hiring strategies for Maya's replacement. "You'll give 2 weeks' notice, of course," Rosie said. "But Maya, I don't want you to feel guilty about leaving. You've given this place everything you could for 2 years, Now it's time to give the world everything you can. Maya's shift that day was surreal, moving through familiar routines while mentally preparing for a completely different life. Regular customers noticed her distracted demeanor, and Maya found herself sharing the news with people who'd become part of her daily existence. Mrs. Patterson, who came in every Monday for her standing coffee and blueberry muffin, teared up when Maya explained she'd be moving to California. "I always knew you were too smart for this place," Mrs. Patterson said, squeezing Maya's hand. "But I'm going to miss having someone here who actually listens when I talk about my garden." The emotional weight of leaving accumulated throughout the day. Maya realized she wasn't just changing jobs, she was leaving behind a community that supported her through difficult years, people who'd seen her potential even when she couldn't see it herself. By evening, Maya had made her decision. She called David from her apartment, accepting the offer with enthusiasm that surprised even her. David's response was immediate and warm, expressing excitement about Maya joining the team and outlining next steps for her transition. "We'd like you to start in 3 weeks if possible. That gives you time to wrap up your current commitments and allows us to prepare for your arrival. We're already assembling the team you'll be leading, including some of the most talented engineers in the industry." After ending the call, Maya sat in her apartment surrounded by the familiar comforts of her current life, trying to imagine herself in 3 weeks living in San Francisco, leading a team of accomplished engineers, working on problems that could reshape an entire industry. The transformation felt like stepping through a portal into an alternate version of her life. Her phone rang, interrupting her contemplation. The caller ID showed Dr. Martinez's office, and Maya answered with slight concern about her mother's health. "This is Dr. Martinez," tamed the familiar voice of her mother's oncologist. "I hope you don't mind me calling directly, but your mother gave me permission to discuss her case with you." Maya's heart skipped. "Is everything okay? Is there a problem with her treatment?" "Actually, quite the opposite," Dr. Martinez said warmly. "I've been reviewing Linda's latest test results, and the response to her current treatment protocol has been exceptional. Her tumor markers have decreased by 70% over the past 3 months, which is an outstanding result." Maya felt tears of relief prick her eyes. "That's wonderful news." "It is, but I'm calling because Linda mentioned you might be relocating to California, and I wanted to discuss her ongoing care. The specialists at UCSF are some of the best in the country, and given her excellent response to treatment, this could be an ideal time for a transition. There are experimental therapies available there that we can't offer here." The conversation continued for 15 minutes, with Dr. Martinez explaining how the move to California could actually benefit Linda's treatment options. Maya realized that even this aspect of her decision, her deepest concern about leaving, was aligning in ways that seemed almost impossibly perfect. Wednesday brought Maya's official 2 weeks' notice to Rosie, along with a celebration dinner that included the entire diner staff. Marcus, the server who would be promoted to assistant manager, presented Maya with a custom napkin holder engraved with the words, "For algorithms and dreams, from your family at Rosie's." The gesture moved Maya more than she'd expected. These people who worked for modest wages in a small Virginia town had recognized her talent long before Silicon Valley discovered it. They'd supported her ambitions without jealousy, celebrated her success without reservation. "Speech!" called out Terry, the night cook who'd been working at Rosie's longer than anyone except Rosie herself.
Maya stood, looking around at the faces that had become so familiar. 2 years ago, I thought my dreams were over. I thought I'd missed my chance, that I'd have to choose between family and aspirations. You all proved me wrong. You showed me that dreams don't die. They just wait for the right moment to become reality." The celebration continued late into the evening, with stories and laughter that felt both like a goodbye and a beginning. Maya realized she'd found something at Rosie's that money couldn't buy. A community that had seen her potential when she couldn't see it herself. People who'd encouraged her growth without trying to hold her back. Thursday evening brought an unexpected visitor to Maya's apartment. Linda Chen arrived with a suitcase and a determined expression that Maya recognized from childhood moments when her mother had made important decisions. "I've been thinking about San Francisco," Linda announced, settling into Maya's desk chair with the manner of someone prepared for a long conversation. "And I've decided I'm ready for an adventure." Maya looked up from her laptop, where she'd been researching neighborhoods and apartment options. "Mom, you don't have to move just because I'm moving. We can make arrangements for your care here. Visits back and forth." "Maya," Linda interrupted gently, "I'm 52 years old. I've lived in this town my entire adult life. I've worked the same job, shopped at the same stores, seen the same faces every day for 30 years. The cancer made me realize that I don't want to spend whatever time I have left playing it safe." Maya studied her mother's face, seeing a determination she recognized but hadn't expected in this context. "Besides," Linda continued with a small smile, "Dr. Martinez thinks the specialists in California might be able to help me in ways the local hospital can't. And honestly, sweetheart, I've always wondered what it would be like to live somewhere completely different." They spent the evening planning together, researching California's medical systems, looking at neighborhoods that might work for both of them, discussing the practical details of relocating their entire lives. Maya felt a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying to begin to lift. She wouldn't have to choose between opportunity and family, and wouldn't have to leave her mother behind to pursue her dreams. The following week passed in a blur of preparations and goodbyes. Maya worked her final shifts at the diner, trained Marcus on her responsibilities, and gradually shared the news of her opportunity with the broader community. The response was uniformly positive, though tinged with the sadness that comes when someone beloved prepares to leave. Saturday brought Maya's last day at Rosie's, marked by a steady stream of regular customers who wanted to wish her well. Mrs. Patterson brought a cutting from her prize-winning roses for Maya to plant in California. The college students she'd helped with computer problems over the years presented her with a card signed by dozens of people she'd assisted with technological challenges. As Maya's shift ended, Rosie handed her a final paycheck along with an envelope marked, "From Maya. Do not open until San Francisco." "Rosie, you've already done so much," Maya began. "Just open it when you get there," Rosie said firmly. "Consider it a reminder of where you came from and how proud we all are of where you're going." Maya's last evening in Virginia was spent with her mother, packing the belongings they'd take to California and donating items they wouldn't need. The process was both melancholy and exciting, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. "Are you nervous?" Linda asked as they worked through Maya's closet, deciding which clothes made sense for California weather. "Terrified," Maya admitted, "but also excited. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm moving toward something, instead of just managing what I have." "That's exactly how I feel too," Linda said, folding one of Maya's diner uniforms into a donation box. "Like we're finally taking charge of our story instead of just letting it happen to us." Sunday morning brought their departure, with Rosie and several co-workers gathering at the diner to see them off. Maya had shipped most of their belongings ahead, leaving only carry-on bags for the flight that would take them to their new life. As their plane lifted off from Virginia, Maya watched her hometown shrink below them, feeling simultaneously sad about leaving and excited about arriving. She thought about the napkin algorithm that had started everything, still tucked in her wallet alongside David's original business card. "What are you thinking about?" Linda asked, noticing Maya's contemplative expression. "Just that 6 months ago, I never could have imagined this. I was so focused on surviving day to day that I forgot to dream about what might be possible." "And now?" Linda prompted. Maya smiled, looking ahead toward the California horizon. "Now I'm wondering how big I should dream." The plane carried them west toward San Francisco, toward Streamflow Technologies, toward the beginning of a story that had started with equations on coffee-stained napkins and was evolving into something Maya had never dared imagine. Below them, The country spread out like a map of possibilities, and Maya felt ready to discover what lay ahead. Maya's first day at StreamFlow Technologies began at 7:30 a.m. in a conference room overlooking San Francisco Bay. 6 months ago, she had been serving coffee to tech executives. Now, she was leading a team of Silicon Valley's top engineers. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Maya Chen, our new Director of Innovative Systems Development, David Reeves announced. Maya will be leading Project Synthesis, our initiative to revolutionize streaming technology. Maya looked around the table at Dr. Sarah Kim from Google's AI division, Marcus Washington from Netflix's compression team, and Jennifer Torres from Amazon's cloud architecture group. Her initial nervousness evaporated as she began explaining the algorithm she'd first sketched on a napkin during her waitressing breaks. The mathematics are sound, Dr. Kim concluded after Maya worked through complex proofs on the smartboard. But the computational resources required would be massive. What if we approached resource allocation differently? Maya replied, outlining her breakthrough concept, a distributed processing model that would turn StreamFlow's entire user base into a peer-to-peer optimization network, leveraging idle computational capacity on users' devices. You're proposing to turn our users into a distributed supercomputer? Marcus said, eyes widening. Brilliant. The next 3 months flew by in intense collaboration. Dr. Kim developed predictive models that anticipated user behavior with remarkable accuracy. Marcus refined Maya's napkin equations into production-ready code. Jennifer designed cloud architectures for seamless integration. During this period, Maya received the best news possible. Her mother's cancer was in complete remission. The move to San Francisco had enabled access to experimental treatments at UCSF, and Linda was thriving in their new life, taking art classes and exploring the city's cultural offerings. The breakthrough came during a late-night debugging session when Dr. Kim discovered their system wasn't just optimizing compression, it was preventing network congestion before it occurred, achieving performance improvements of 43% while reducing bandwidth usage by 37%. The distributed network is sharing real-time information about local network conditions, Dr. Kim explained excitedly. It's like having millions of traffic sensors optimizing internet routing for everyone. Project Synthesis launched on a foggy October morning. Maya monitored the rollout from StreamFlow's operations center, watching as user satisfaction scores improved immediately and bandwidth costs dropped 31% within the first week. The success brought industry recognition, Wired magazine covers, MIT guest lectures, venture capital interest. But Maya's greatest satisfaction came from an email from a computer science student in Ohio. I've been following Quantum Coffee's forum posts for years. I never imagined you'd started as a waitress. Your story gives me hope that innovation can come from anywhere. Maya smiled, remembering the napkin that had started it all. She'd proven that brilliant ideas don't require prestigious backgrounds, just curiosity, persistence, and the courage to believe in seemingly impossible solutions. Maya's transformation from serving coffee to leading innovation shows us that genius can be found anywhere, even scribbled on napkins during late-night shifts. If this story inspired you to recognize the hidden potential in yourself or others, please like, share, and subscribe. Every share could reach someone who needs to hear that their dreams are worth pursuing, no matter how impossible they seem.